Okay, Doctor, it's June 23rd,
Right.
2015,
Mhm.
Tuesday.
All right.
Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
We've had a big week already, and it's only Tuesday.
Oh, I know. I'm gonna turn this phone off too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We had a filming with Rick Spurl yesterday
Yes.
over at Delmar campus. Rick was interested in the work that the foundation, that I believe it's the Public Information Act Foundation.
It's Public Information Foundation of Texas.
Okay, and they are, they've contacted us, and they are going to file a brief on our behalf with the district attorney in regards to the length of time and the difficulty that we've had obtaining Public Information Act request responses.
Right.
The responses have been sporadic, lengthy, in that it's a 10-day, the act says within 10 days,
Right.
and it doesn't say at the 10th day. In fact, I believe if an item is available, readily available,
Mhm.
they're obligated under the act to give it to you at the time you request it.
Right.
We've not had that experience with the Delmar people. In fact, I documented one PIA that I had originally filed in response to the original one that you filed. Boy, it wasn't quite 2 years ago, but it was a long time ago, where you asked for the bad debt write-offs for a 10-year period.
Mhm.
And the Delmar PIA person at that time, who was different, I believe that was Dr. Sloan at that time.
Right.
Dr. Sloan gave you about a 5-foot stack of documents,
Mhm.
and in that we found there were 3 documents that were fairly significant.
Right.
It said third-party bad debt, third-party accounts receivable written off as uncollectible.
Right.
Um,
And that was at $185,000+.
It was, and
Now, since I did ask for the 10-year period of time, why did we only get that one?
well,
Because the rest of it wasn't in that stack of stuff.
well, do we really know that though? That was a 5-foot stack of stuff.
I can speculate.
I'm thinking we may have just been very, very fortunate to find those 3 documents.
Right. Well, that's true.
And those triggered more PIA requests.
Mhm.
And they triggered one response to my first PIA request for 7 detailed printouts of general ledger accounts for a 10-year period. It's basically, and in this case it was less than 200 pages.
Mhm.
That's when I received a quote from a Miss Tammy McDonald,
Mhm.
the current PIA officer. I think she's executive director of human resources, and there's
And administration.
there's some other.
Yeah.
It's a
Underwater
very
basket we.
it's a very long title. She said I could have those documents for $26.7 million,
Mhm.
but there were 105 million documents, and it would take somewhere around 120 man-years to produce them.
Mhm.
You and I negotiated with Augie Rivera, the outside counsel, to get that reduced from $26.7 million to 0,
Mhm.
and from 105 million documents to less than 200.
Right.
And then that was the information that I'd actually wanted.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
and that led to my analysis of their audited financial statements for a 7-year period,
Mhm.
in which I found that they had written off $2.838 million in bad debt. It's a good accounts receivable written off as uncollectible.
Right.
So I asked for it. I wanted the detail. And I gave them a breakout by year, how much it was. Now, granted, it came from their audited financial statements. You would think they would know what the dollar amount was. Well, it seemed they didn't. That was certainly the appearance I got. And then $2.838 million, when they said it would take more time, of course.
Yeah.
And they sent it to Lord Graves Daughtry, but
Mhm.
thousands of dollars were spent trying to evade giving me the
Oh.
information. But when they said it was ready, now this is the accounting department, and a big component of the accounting department, what people have to be able to do in accounting is reconcile.
Yeah,
Right? If you can't reconcile, you're probably in the wrong profession.
yes.
So when I asked for $2.838 million of documents, and I broke it out by year, they said through Miss Tammy McDonald, said your documents are ready, you can come down and view them. So we went down there, and I think I paid for them. I didn't read them, I paid for the documents, and took them home and started summarizing them, and noticed that about 20% weren't there,
Right.
and almost $500,000. So I was told all the documents were there. What I received was about 80% of what I asked for.
Mhm.
And they didn't seem to know it.
No, well, maybe that's heads up, accounting.
My goodness, somebody wasn't able to reconcile. So I was. So I sent another PIA and said, I really need the rest of the documents. So all of this led to about a 100-day period where it looked like they weren't being very cooperative.
They're not famous for that.
They are famous.
Well,
Not for
God
that.
forbid.
So you have been a contributor to this foundation,
Right.
and Rick Spurl had actually told us about the foundation.
Right.
So I summarized things, and I don't know how many pages it was, but when I got an email back from him, it said 46 pages. So I gave exhibits and a chronological dissertation of what the events were and how I was treated and how they didn't comply with the letter or the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
And the foundation had a board meeting almost 2 weeks ago on Thursday and in Austin, and they discussed my documentation
Mhm.
and decided that it would be a good example of how to file charges or a complaint
Right.
against a college or a public entity, a college in this case, for failure to comply.
Mhm.
So they have an attorney that's got decades of experience working on that in Houston at this time. And we sent that information to Rick, and Rick wanted to get a little bit of feedback and follow up on it
Mhm.
for Channel 6 last night, which he did.
Yeah.
And now I didn't get nearly the Facebook responses that you got from your episode, 2 weeks ago on a
Yes.
Friday.
Mhm.
You had 104 comments, 103 of them were positive, and I'm thinking, gosh, there's at least 1% crazy people out there,
Yeah.
and you only got your 1%er in there.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the teaching business, folks, they either love you or hate you. You can't please everyone. So.
Well, yours were astoundingly positive. So we followed up with Rick on that, and of course he has to film for 20 minutes and then cut it down to
Right.
the 12 seconds that we actually get.
Mhm.
But he did a very nice job.
Yes, he did.
But he wasn't able to show some things that I'd hoped that the public would be able to get for information that will benefit them. Because not everybody is aware of how absolutely outrageous
Mhm.
or outrageously the administration has been treating the public, the taxpayers.
Right.
And let's just, we'll try to go through that as comprehensively as we can, but I'd like to segue into the Open Meetings Act that
Okay.
you had an open meeting,
Right.
that you'd requested it be open,
Right.
So it then fell under the statute that governs open meeting acts.
Right.
Okay, so can you,
Sure, I can give
Mine
you a
is-
quick. I had some disagreements with my department chair. I won't get into the specifics of that. And he, all of a sudden, out of the blue, filed it's a disciplinary action letter that he wanted to put into my personnel file. He claimed that I had been, what was that, insubordinate, and what was the other term he used, hostile. Okay? Now, I asked them for the definition of that and didn't get it. But what happened was, I went ahead and I had the ability to appeal that and have either a closed or open meeting. So I filed 3 Public Information Act requests to obtain the information that I needed in order to defend myself in such a hearing, because they were going to bring in my department chair, my dean, and then Mrs. Tammy McDonald from HR to for whatever reason, I'm not sure. And then they had a panel which consisted of the interim vice president of instruction and Miss Cynthia Cano, an attorney for the school, and she's one of the president's former buddies. So anyway, they had a meeting, and rather than have a faculty member that could go ahead and mediate that, they used the chief informational officer, who's a high-ranking administrator. He's up there with vice presidents and deans and so forth. Now, there wasn't a single academic person on that hearing committee, but it was. I've requested that it be open. So when I filed the 3 Public Information Act requests for the information I need to defend myself, then what happened was they hired Graves Daughtry and Heron and Moody out of Austin, and they asked for an opinion through Attorney General's office to see if they were some way they could keep the information away from me. So the pleading that the attorneys, and these are $400-500 an hour attorneys that the college hires, they concocted this statement that I couldn't have that information because it was attorney-client privilege, because the hearing that I had requested for that, the appeals committee, that was a quasi-judicial forum. Now, that's stretching it, folks, okay? So they did not give it to me. Now, unbeknownst to me, and that was, I think, March the 27th, on April 30th, apparently the Attorney General's office rendered an opinion and said, give me most of that stuff, you can't withhold it. I think there were a couple of things that may have been needed to be redacted, but the vast majority of it was due to me. I didn't know that letter had been sent out. A copy was supposed to have been sent to me from the Attorney General's office. I never got it. So what transpired then is the president of the college started pressuring me to hustle up and pick a date for that hearing, which was May 18th, which just happened to be the Monday after the spring semester ended, and my potential witnesses, the faculty members, were gone, of course, and it was very conveniently planned out by the administration. Now, I had that hearing, and I requested it, and I was able to do this under policy, an open meeting. And I said, I'm going to have people videotape this. So 2 gentlemen showed up, Ed being one of them, and Jack Gordy, vice president of the Taxpayers Association. Both showed up with video cameras, and there was a policeman hired, I guess, in case I got out of line. I don't know why they have to have a policeman around there for an open hearing like
$50 an
that.
hour.
Yeah, well, I guess they need protection from me. I'm such a violent person. But, so that Claudia Jackson, the PR person there, instructed the policeman to go over and make sure that the 2 cameras were taken off the tripods or at least closed up.
And this was after August had announced.
And this was after the CIO, I guess, the chief information officer who had been designated to run the committee as chairman, he said that no videotaping. Now that flies in the face of the Open Meetings Act, which says that you can audio, videotape, or whatever you want to do as long as you're not a nuisance in there and blocking, you know.
And that's Texas
conversations.
state statute.
That's the Texas Open Meetings Act. So they violated that, and they did audio tape it. Now, during the middle of that, Ms. Cano sat there and started asking me why. She pulled out my 3 Public Information Act requests that they had not honored, okay, and were withholding the information from me. And then what they did was they said, she started asking me why I was interested in obtaining all of those. I think she had all of the items I had on all 3 of them. She asked me, well, why did you want this? Well, if you go into Public Information Act and the Texas Publication Information Act, it states quite clearly that me as a requester cannot be asked by any governmental agency why I want that information. So for 10, 15 minutes, she blatantly violated the Public Information Act.
So during that hearing, we had 2 blatant violations of Texas state statutes.
That's right. Yes.
Now, for everybody's information, I have filed a complaint with the district attorney because my rights under the Open Meetings Act were violated.
Mm-hmm.
So I filed a complaint, and I've included the tape recording of the direction from August, the CIO that was in charge, the
Right.
Chief Information Officer.
Mm-hmm.
His tape recording saying, you are not allowed to videotape it per Delmar policy.
Right. And I don't know that Delmar policy can supersede state.
I'd be really
That's
surprised
gonna
and
be
impressed.
interesting. Okay. Well, this one I think, okay, well, after that meeting, it was a real surprise to me that the president's buddy, the CIO officer, said, well, the college had proved its case against me in that letter of reprimand or whatever, that disciplinary action would go into my personnel file, which scares me to death, folks. So after that, I get this letter from Graves Daughtry stating that they had just filed a lawsuit against the Attorney General's office, okay, and they give a cause number, and it's the 419th District Court, Texas District Court out of Travis County, and what they're asking for is, I guess they're suing the Attorney General for
To reverse
his opinion, okay? Now, I just happen to have the Public Information Act with me right here, and under the C part of this one, this is the information for everybody. Information that may be withheld due to an exception, which they were trying to do. But the last of the items here, under that discussion, say governmental bodies may not ask the Attorney General to, quote unquote, reconsider an opinion. So I guess that's why they went ahead and sued the AG's office rather than asking to. I don't know.
So they sued at the rate of approximately $400 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
They are suing the Attorney General of Texas to override his opinion saying you are entitled to this public information,
Right.
which it is public information.
It is.
And let's say, what would the damage be if they released that information to you?
I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's no damage.
No.
So-
it shouldn't be.
So why are they withholding it and at the cost of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars
Right.
to accomplish what? And what in the world
Well,
is
I
their goal?
don't know whether I don't know what in the world that I asked for that triggered such a violent reaction. And then like I say, Ms. Cano in there, she was asking me this and arguing about that and telling me that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about, and just went the normal yak from attorneys that are not the best around. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, she charged Delmar $23,000 for basically the month of November last year.
Right.
This is an attorney that's billing Delmar substantial sums.
That's right.
23,000 for the month of November, which happens to have Thanksgiving in it.
Right.
So
Yeah, it was about a 30-day period of time.
I'm fairly certain she didn't work Thanksgiving, but I may be wrong.
Well, I didn't get my free turkey.
And we don't know for certain what she was working on. Now those documents should be available now.
That, supposedly, I got a certified return receipt letter yesterday, I think. What's the date? Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was yesterday. And some of those documents, they said that they redacted because of credit card numbers and all kinds of account numbers and all kinds of wild, strange stuff. That's what they're doing now. They say we're going to redact this stuff because it's got all this top secret.
We're happy they redacted. We have no interest in
I
that.
have no interest. I don't want people's social security numbers. I don't want their credit card numbers. Now, I may ask for the credit card billings at Delmar during that period of time to see what was going on.
The town club, it's closed now. But I don't know, maybe Delmar cut back on their activity and closed them down.
I don't know what happened. I know they had a real expensive retreat for the board members down
Well,
there.
we need to get that information as well.
We'll do that.
Now I'm seeing in the actions and the reactions of the administration over there, I'm seeing pure and absolute arrogance.
Oh, yes.
It's arrogance. Now, this is an academic institution. It confuses me that they've hired administrators that are academically unqualified.
Well, a case in point, I think the chief financial officer fits into that category.
Now, I'm very familiar with chief financial officer's responsibilities and criteria for employing one. And basically, the criteria is if you don't have an MBA and or a CPA, you're not considered.
Right.
It's always been that way.
Well, and ideally, you want somebody with an MBA and a CPA.
And big four accounting experience,
Right.
years of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want, and that's what you can afford. And when you don't get that, you end up with horrible messes
Mm-hmm.
like what we found in the accounts receivable.
Right.
And the culture over there, it appears to me to be a culture of corruption.
That's, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I've seen that going on for years and years.
They appear to be, and based on that open meetings that you had, and the violation of the Open Meetings Act, and the violation of the Public Information Act, and they're above the law.
Right. Well, let me back up, and I don't even know if you realize this, Ed, I haven't discussed it. Everybody over there is so gaga about research at the undergraduate level, to the point where it's almost nauseating, okay? And we have people that are privileged over there because they get these grants, you know, to do these experiments. They call it research. It's really not anywhere near close to it. But after I came to Delmar College, I started in '89. I came out of private industry, pharmaceutical business, pharmaceutical research, and had a very long research career. I had not taught before that time, except maybe a lecture or two in a medical school or something to that effect. And so when I got here, Celanese Corporation was one of the best chemical companies in the universe. Seriously, it was a very small company based here in Corpus Christi, Texas. So after a couple of years, they called me up and said, hey, you've got an expertise that we'd like to take advantage of. Would you come over here in your spare time as a consultant? Well, I know what that means. That's the reason I got out of industrial research, folks. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for weeks on end. And I used to have a cot in my laboratory that I slept on for 4 or 5, 6 days straight, and had 3 shifts of technicians and people coming in to bring in clean clothes and food. And I slept on a cot the whole time when we had big production runs going with the antibiotics. So I said, the reason I got out of that was so I could see my 2 girls, daughters, in the daylight more than once a month. So I moved down here, but they said, would you please consider this? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to need some help So I'm going to train some of my students out of my majors micro class to run these enzyme assays that you want done. And it was pure research. It wasn't one of these canned Mickey Mouse things that I see over there now. So they said, we'll pay you a certain amount of money and we'll buy you some equipment. And I said, I'm not going to take the pay. And they said, well, we'll pay you your salary for the summer. And I said, well, okay, because the president said he's going to take it. They said, otherwise we won't do the grant. So I did get the grant, and for 2 years. Now, the one reason I didn't go back to Hertz, and it was Celanese at the time, the reason that I did not go back for another 2 years and support the students. Now, I was paying students on an hourly basis, showing them how to conduct research projects, showed them the techniques and how to manipulate things. But the main reason I did not go back was a lousy accounting system at Del Mar College. At that time, we had a different CFO. They called him the Vice President of Business, Finance, and all that good stuff. And what would happen is we'd get reports, and he'd be paying somebody over on West Campus out of that account, and then he'd transfer the money over here. And I mean, it was bouncing around in there. And it turned out to be an absolute mess with no control on it. And actually, I had to go out to Hertz Celanese, to the president and everybody out there, vice president and their chief financial officer, and sit down with all the receipts I could muster and prove to them that no money had been stolen or, yeah. I mean, I had it to the penny, folks. But I said, I don't want any more of this. And apparently, you know, it's the same.
Well, actually,
that man that was at that time had an MBA and a CPA.
that's scary. But it's a different system now because they had a conversion in 2010, and we saw how well that conversion went. Any accounting conversion, it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, you stop and go back, unless you're Del Mar.
Yeah, well, we don't have a in-house, what is that, internal auditor either.
You don't have a CPA, you don't have an internal auditor, you have no checks and balances, the internal controls are weak at best. We already know they can't reconcile.
Right. Well, what tickled me, or I guess it wasn't tickled me, it was a tragedy, it make you want to sit down and cry, is when we asked for certain information and we found that letter that said, well, I went to the file drawer and I can't find any records on this, so we're going to write off, what was that, $100,000?
There were 2 letters like that. One was $110,000.
Yeah.
It was a memo from one clerk to the college controller.
Yeah.
I recommend we write it off, $110,000. That was all the research that was done.
Yeah.
I opened the file drawer and nothing was there.
Hey, write it off.
My Lord. See, if these collection efforts were good, and they're good enough for the taxpayers, my question is, why doesn't the college Board of Regents president who works at American Bank, why doesn't he adopt these collection efforts for American Bank?
I don't know.
You would think if it's good enough for taxpayer money, it'd be good enough for the bank.
That's right.
So that's a bit of my confusion.
Well, it's really sad to see that happen. And then another excuse was, and justification from our PR person, Claudia Jackson. She indicated that that was all student debt, the vast majority of it. That corporations would send students to Del Mar College to take classes. They would get the money from Del Mar College, and then all of a sudden they would disappear. Now, I would think that the corporation that's sponsoring those students would be the ones to pay the freight and not have it written off as a Del Mar College.
It's been a while since I've been to college, but when I had to pay my tuition before they allowed me in the class.
Yeah.
So if the sponsor is paying the tuition,
Right.
it's paid before the student's allowed in the class.
Right.
So it would be collected from the third party.
Well, I had a friend of mine that took student loans out, and then he defaulted in the future years. He was out working, and then the IRS collected it for him. They just said, hey, you know.
They can garnish, even in
Yeah.
Texas.
That's right. So, you know, I mean, there are methods to do that. Now, we asked for the proof that they had tried, because that's what the CFO had indicated at that workshop. I have exhausted all.
Exhausted all collection efforts.
Right.
Those are very valuable words. He'd exhausted all collection efforts.
And then how many collection effort documents did I see in the 5-foot stack?
There weren't any.
0.
Yeah, there were none.
No certified return receipt green cards, no lawsuits.
No demand letters, no lawsuits.
I think the most severe one of them said was, if you don't pay it back, you'll never be able to get a transcript from us.
I don't think that's been very effective.
Not with the amount of money they've been writing off.
So what we found is symptoms of problems. We have not found the problems because we haven't been allowed to get the information. But when it takes 100 days to get 10 days worth of information, all of a sudden you're into it for a year and don't have anything. And that's where we're at. We have very little. Now, what we have is, well, it's enlightening. It looks like they've got severe problems associated with the academic, unqualified people that they're actually hiring, and the internal control systems that don't exist. And when I say internal control systems, those are checks and balances. That would be like reconciling the $2.838 million to all the documents that they gave me. They should have added them all up, and it equaled $2.838 million. What they did was hand me a pile.
Oh, yeah.
There was no reconciliation done.
Well, I would think with the amount of bad press that they've had heaped on them so far, that they would take you over there and sit you down with the books and say, hey, you know, we're going to sit here until we figure this thing out to your satisfaction.
I don't think they want to show me their books.
That brings up another scenario. They certainly don't want to give me information to defend myself. And that one's not over, folks. That one's not hard.
That just started, I believe.
Yeah, that's it started.
So we've had a good week. We're about out of time. And I do want to point out one reason that it takes so long to get this information, and it looks as if we're filing multiple PIA requests. Ms. McDonald, early on, before she gave me that $26.7 million quote, she told me that she'd furnished me with a chart of accounts. I said, you were there with me. I said, there's no chart of accounts here. So I wrote another PIA. I said, I need a chart of accounts. You didn't give it to me. She said, I did give it to you. I'll give it to you again, but I've already furnished it. So we met with her. She wrote me an email and sent me a letter saying that she'd already provided it. We met with her in a little lunchroom over there.
Yeah, the conference room was tied up.
And she explained, I was giving her the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe she didn't have any idea what a chart of accounts was. So I was explaining what it was when she said, well, I have basically a master's degree in business, and I've worked with accounting for years, including charts of accounts.
Right.
She said, I can only give you what the supervisor gives me. Well, at that point, I didn't say anything, because when somebody starts slitting their throat, I tend to back off and let them work on it.
Finish up.
So I said, in my mind, I said, well, why would you write a letter saying that you had given it to me when you knew full well you hadn't? And so here we are, 3 PIAs, no chart of accounts, and the only way I got it was when I filed a document with the Attorney General complaining about the $26.7 million. I put a paragraph in there and said, why is this okay? And apparently the Attorney General didn't think it was.
No.
Because 2 days later, I had a PDF file emailed to me with the chart.
Isn't it amazing?
So I see a culture of corruption, pure arrogance. They seem to be above the law. It's my experience that corruption ultimately manifests itself in the financial statements.
Right.
So we are trying to get to the financial statements. We're probably not going to be able to. We have requested the controller's office through their auditor to come down here and look for specific things which I have outlined. I said, is Delmar a victim? Or are they just that incompetent?
Right.
Really, I don't know. I think they may be a victim, but they may just be that incompetent.
Well, I'll interject this at the city level. They found 3 people that were in the, Parks and Recreation Division that had stolen $100,000.
I saw 2 of them.
Yeah, there were two individuals.
Okay.
And in order not to hurt anybody's feelings, I guess, the deal that was struck with those 2 was that we'll give you $50,000 now and pay you the other $50,000 over so many years, and we'll be on probation. Now, I think that's my tax money, folks. And if I'd done that, I'd be looking through bars with, I wonder what in the world, why did I get caught?
A guy pulls up to Champions Bank up here and robs him of $300. He's going to the penitentiary.
Yeah.
But if you steal money through white-collar crime in Corpus, don't serve a day.
Right.
Well, South Texas corruption.
I have a lot of my students that keep an eye on these shows that we do, and their tuition keeps going up, and they can't get full service for what they're paying for over there. They're asked what they want when they, to walk up to one of those Windows information booths, and treated very poorly, to be totally honest with you, by the Delmar College employees over there in certain areas. And I'm asked by students, why are you interested in that? And I said, because that's my money and your money. And, if people want to go out and steal it, and they said, well, how do they steal it? And I said, okay, we have a write-off here. Let's say that we discovered the debt had been written off. And I said, just think about this. If a person is in control over there and knows a company, let's say, that owes them $10,000, and they walk over to that company and say, here, give me a check for $4,000 or $5,000, and I'll go back and write the rest of it off.
And that's one way that it would work. Another way is what is called accounts receivable lapping. And that's very common in the investment field. That's where, let's say you've got a $110,000 receivable from a third party, and you've got 110 students that all pay cash. Well, if you put the $110,000 from the students in your pocket and apply the $110,000 that the company gave to Delmar, to all those students, then the student debt reads 0. You've got the cash in your pocket. The only problem is you've still got a receivable from a company that has actually paid it.
Mm-hmm.
So to eliminate that, what you do is write it off to bad debt.
Well, did you not see something similar to that with Verizon?
We did with Verizon, and Verizon was supported by a standby letter of credit.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no way in the world that debt qualified for bad debt. And it just didn't make any sense.
Right.
And I'm afraid we're over
Okay.
on our time, but it's a culture of corruption and pure arrogance. And we've called in other people to help.
All right.
Doctor, I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Ed.
We'll do it again.
You bet.